Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Rock Solid Productions. If this is your first time to the channel, I appreciate you coming by. My name is Gary, your host here on the channel, and we are going to bring our special guest, Terrence, in just a moment. We just need to make sure that everything is working as it should be. Going to check our stream really quick. Looks like we got everything going up and running, so terrific. So for those of you who are unfamiliar again with me, with the channel and everything, I have been involved in video gaming of some sort since the early 1980s. Primarily a Nintendo fanboy, so happy Mario Day, everybody. But it is at this time my pleasure to bring in Terrence, the PR specialist for Hyperkin. Terrence, thanks so much for spending your evening with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gary. Happy Mario Day, everyone.
And we've already got a super chat here from Moxley and Sean, one of our regulars here on the channel. For those who are unaware, we actually have super chat rewards. If you do super chat during the broadcast here, if you look down below in the more info section, pick a number there and we will play a super chat for you. If we're in the middle of asking or answering a question, we'll get to it as soon as that question is complete. But Terrence, for those of you, and Sean, go ahead and put your number in whenever you are ready and we'll get to it in a moment. Terrence, for those of you out there who are not familiar with you and your history, can you kind of give us a background? Actually, before we get to that, that will be the first question, but just want to talk about the format of this interview for those who have not seen an interview that I've done in the past. For me, I'm genuinely a geek of all tech. I worked at Radio Shack, for crying out loud. The community, I know, has many legitimate questions and concerns about what's going on, not only with the Retron SQ, but with all things Hyperkin. And I reached out to Terrence, and he graciously agreed to appear here on the channel. If you've got questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. We will get to as many as we can. We have about an hour with Terrence. He's in California. I don't want to keep him too late tonight. But one thing that I do ask is please keep, if you have questions or comments, please keep the vulgarity out of the chat. It's not needed. If you have criticisms and questions, they are welcome. No personal attacks. Not going to tolerate that. My moderators here in the chat, you have full authorization to drop the ban hammer as you see fit. You're my mods. I trust you completely. And I don't care what other people's takes on different products are, different views, so on and so forth. If you want to see their takes, go watch their channel. We're here to discuss things openly, honestly, and have a very frank but fun discussion. So again, welcome, Terrence. As I was saying, what's your background in the video game industry?
So I want to say like maybe around 2011, 2012, I started into programming Game Boys. I got into the chiptune scene around 2012. I have a band. We're called Here Between You Me. We kind of play like a spin on emo meets pop punk meets chiptune. And because of that, I started going to more of these retro gaming events. I started playing some of these retro gaming events, and I started meeting a bunch of people. And eventually, I started hearing about this company called Hyperkin. And at the time, I was doing marketing for a startup. And, you know, like it was about the time I was like, oh, I'm at this company for a while. I think I kind of want to leave. And my friend was like, hey, you should check out this company, Hyperkin. They're hiring. So I think I basically was hired on as like a content writer at the time. I wasn't really technically doing marketing per se or PR per se, but eventually, yeah, the team changed a lot. I started going to conventions. I started flexing my journalism degree and doing a little bit more PR than anything. So eventually my title kind of morphed, and I would say what I mostly do is PR. But I still do a lot of content writing. But I've been at the company for, yeah, about 7 years now, and it's been a crazy ride, especially since the retro gaming community and the gaming community in general. It's just kind of, yeah, it's it's intense, but it's been really fun. I mean, this has been something I've probably wanted to do for, you know, my whole life. I've been gaming since I was 3. My dad used to take me to mom and pop gaming stores. I would just I got into import gaming when I was maybe like maybe 8 or 9, because it was like, oh, my dad can buy me like games for $2.99, and it's stuff that my friends have never heard of. Yeah, sure. And I'll get like a stack of games like on Christmas or something, and that was really fun. So just knowing that like retro gaming and obscure gaming, it's just kind of a niche community, and it's something I can share with people with like interests. Yeah, Hyperkin was basically the place for me, and so yeah, it's been a cool 7 years. and I'm still making chiptune. I'm still making dorky music on the Game Boy. So,
well, talking about people who are dorks, our friends over at the Pixel Game Squad want to know where can they hear tracks from the band.
well, we're on Bandcamp. So here between you, me, it's just how it's spelled. Bandcamp.com, Spotify, we're on there too. But yeah, it's been cool trying to like navigate all the really critical people in the chiptune world, but also working for Hyperkin. So you get people who will approach me and they're like, "Hey, can the Retron 5 play chiptune?" And I'm like, I mean, you could probably try to get like your LSDJ cart to work, but not necessarily. And they'll just like go off on me or something. I'm like, hey man, that's not. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's just yeah, it's been crazy. But yeah, Spotify, Bandcamp, YouTube. But you know, we've been kind of inactive because we can't play shows.
Yep.
So
because this whole COVID thing.
Yeah, and as much as I'd like to play stuff online with my friends through live streaming, it's hard. You know, we're all in our 30s now, so getting together with my friends to be rock stars has been a little bit harder as adults. So
Very cool. Well, and again, we do have that super chat reward here, so we're going to go ahead and play that for our friend Sean, who wants the smoke. I don't know if the audio is coming through because I can't hear it, so let me know in the chat. So that's just one of our many different super chat rewards that we have here. So the next thing, I caught you mid-drink. Again, I'm assuming you're using a Hyperkin headset. If you want to go ahead and promote that a little bit too, because you actually sound really good.
I grabbed whatever was in this room. I believe this is an ultrawave headset, and we do sell that on the website. So
we kind of talked about your background in the industry, your history with Hyperkin. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the third rail right away because, as we all know, oh come on, HDMI cable is still connected because I do actually play these. The Retron SQ has been interesting is the best way that I will put it for right now. We've had a lot of different questions from the community on it, and I have to admit the questions that we've gotten have been exceptional. So thank you. Sorry, Christian, there's no sound. All right, I will work on that down the road. But a lot of people have asked on this, the operating system, because you also have the Retron 5, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. Does this share anything whatsoever with the Retron 5 in terms of operating system, builds, the way it works, above and beyond? It dumps the ROM, it plays the ROM.
To be honest, I mean, that's really where the similarities are. It's different hardware, different software. So, and it is open source software. So, like maybe you can share it in the chat somewhere, but it is on the hyperkin.com page. If you go to Retron, if you look up the Retron SQ product page, there is a link in there that actually shows where to access the software. So it has a list of all the resources we used. And it actually lets you download the initial firmware for it. But other than that, yeah, it's not similar software as the Retron 5 or hardware. Completely different. But yeah, in the way that you said, it does dump the ROM, and it is pretty similar to the Retron 77, in fact, in the way that it operates. So yeah, I guess the big difference too is that there's no other features other than it lets you play the game. So Retron 5 has a bevy of features, obviously.
Now, if I remember right, was it CES of last year that it was originally announced? And if so, how long before the actual announcement had this been in development?
So I remember it was April Fool's Joke 2000, and I don't remember the year. I'm sorry. I think it was 2017, maybe 2018. And we kind of announced the Retron Junior. And then that eventually, a couple of years later, we're like, hey, we can actually make this. And this isn't one of those things where it's like an April Fool's joke. We weren't trying to test the waters to see if anyone wanted something like that. Of course, someone wants a little mini console that plays Game Boy games. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, we're like, oh, wait, we can actually just make this thing. So I would say maybe a good year or so before we took it to CES, we were already kind of doing a lot of the early development for it. But yeah, and then yeah, it wasn't until CES 2020 when we actually confirmed it and showed an actual kind of physical prototype of it.
So early reviews, I mean, let's just be frank, they weren't good. They just weren't. Whether you're talking about the immortal John Hancock, MJR, myself, I mean, we all kind of ran into issues with the system out of the box. I mean, just being honest here, I mean, and for all of you watching, when Hyperkin sends me a product, Terrence emails me, hey, here's your tracking number. Send us a link when you're ready to go live. We'll help you promote it. That's by and large, unless there's like press releases or things to go with it, that's by and large our communication before, during, and after an item gets sent in for review. I mean, fair statement, Terrence?
No, definitely. Before I got into marketing, I was a journalist. So if I was to try to prep anyone out of our media contacts and tell them, hey, can you give us a good review or anything like that, I would be shaming my professors.
Right.
They would be so angry at me. But we try to uphold integrity in terms of our relationship with our media contacts. And we trust that, just like you and MJR and, John Hancock, you've all been super honest, super thorough, and that's all we ask. Because if you weren't, then there's no way for us to grow. There's no way for our devs to grow. There's no way for a company to grow. So we love that you guys maintain your honesty.
Well, and kind of dovetailing on that, I was going to add this to the questions for later, but I want you to have a chance to address this right now. From Blue Kirby 3 wants to know, how many people are in the room with you, Terrence, or how many Hyperkin employees are watching or providing guidance? And I think this is a great thing because we talked about this before we actually were in the stream together, before the stream started. Just to let everybody know, I mean, how many people are there with you right now?
I'm alone because I have my mask off, so no one can be in here with me.
So yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where essentially, and again, just being honest with everybody, and this is the same thing with our Tommy interview we had recently. Terrence kind of has an idea of flow for this interview, but like specific questions he doesn't know about. This isn't anything to get Hyperkin over. At the same point, this isn't a gotcha sort of interview either. This is one of those things that we want to have this honest dialogue with the community. So again, talking about the reviews, at least the 3 that I know of, and I honestly don't know if anyone else has reviewed the SQ as of yet. What were the reactions internally? Because like I say, they were not glowing.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, it was pretty interesting to see all the different features that, could have showed up in our review units. And of course, that includes the aspect ratio, which was brought up about a week before, I think, Metal Jesus' review by Modern Vintage Gamer. He did point that out, that I think, what was it? Yeah, that the aspect ratio didn't exactly match the Game Boy's aspect ratio. And we were going from a 4:3 to 16:9 aspect ratio, which is shown in the back of the console. And the thing is, I mean, of course we can be like, oh no, that's who wants any of those things? No, like our audience is you guys, like you're our direct audience. There's no one else that we want to cater to. Of course, the console is meant for everyone to enjoy. It isn't something for, like hardcore retro elitists, obviously, but I mean, you guys are the ones that are going to buy this console first. You guys are the ones that are going to critique it first. So yeah, I mean, we were pretty receptive to the criticism, and we tend to usually be. I mean, if we didn't, then of course, like I said, we wouldn't grow. So we're trying really hard to basically deliver some sort of day 1 patch or even a day 0 patch. And I can literally tell you right now that the aspect ratio, that's been fixed already, and the blurriness that John Hancock pointed out. So it's just a matter of time before we kind of wrap things up with the patch and host it on our website. And yeah, we still have 2 more weeks to launch, and hopefully if there's more input, with more reviews, we can try to put more fixes or patches in there. But yeah, I mean, we just, we take things day by day. Obviously, we're not gonna, you know, I mean, we send these review units out for people to actually give us honest critiques and like, yeah, I mean, we appreciate it. If people weren't honest with us, then there's no way that our products would ever grow. And like, yeah, it's just but it has been pretty it's been pretty interesting. I would say it's not as brutal as when the Retron 5 first came out. Because I mean that thing was super highly anticipated. I had just gotten hired at that time. I was like, whoa, why are there so many people tweeting at us? Why are there so many people commenting? That was really insane.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things too, and for those who haven't seen it, I've actually tested and shown how to walk through the, excuse me, the update process with the very first firmware update that you guys have sent out for folks like me to go ahead and test. Is the game plan to do the firmware updates at Hyperkin before they get sent out for stores, direct orders, things like that? Or is it something that you are going to request of the customers to do once they've received the units? Because everything as of right now, I would assume, has the original firmware that John, Jason, and I tested out.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, as far as I know, I believe we're just going to make sure we're super adamant about posting on our social media, making sure all the product pages, Amazon, everything has links to the update patch. But it is kind of it's not necessarily an easy process. It does take a little bit of computer savvy. So yeah, we hope that at least day one that people will be able to patch it easily. And we're going to be releasing some videos on how to do that and, walk you step by step through it. For the most part, it's a pretty easy process. And but yeah, it's something that, yeah, we're going to host at least. I personally want it to go up at least a week before, so that people can still tinker around with it. Because again, it is an open source software. Sure. Yeah.
Now, the way that, and John Hancock and I, we actually talk semi-regularly, and he had mentioned the fact that he could not access the SD card on his computer. I threw it in mine. I had the same issue as well, and the fact that there's a piece of software used called Win, and I know I'm going to get the name wrong, but something effective, Win Disk Imager 32 or some combination of that, where it is literally writing a disk image like a DVD or something along those lines. Is that the reason why you can't directly access the file structure through the SD card like you can on the Retron 77? Or is it something more of it's writing to, like many have suggested, that it's writing to a Linux format?
That one, I mean, that's probably beyond my prowess, honestly. But I can say that, yeah, you mentioned that problem, and also John Hancock. Some of the other people that are still working on the reviews, they haven't run into that problem exactly with updating it. So we're still looking into that. It could be a lot of factors. It could be like, I want to say maybe Windows build. It could be the combination of using a micro SD with an adapter to insert it into an SD reader. It could just be the PC itself, or it could be even the SD card. We don't know yet. As far as I know, because I've tried it myself and so have some of my colleagues, we've been able to get the card to read properly. But we're still not counting out you and John's experience. So yeah, we're still working on trying to get that all figured out. But yeah, hopefully that video that we release on, when the patch goes live, hopefully that kind of, explains, how to properly, I guess, update the firmware. But yeah, so, But as far as the more techie related stuff, I could probably ask our dev team. They could probably get a more, more detailed explanation for that.
Okay. And that's fair. And that's quite honestly, for those of you, again, welcome everybody to the chat. We've got over 30 in here so far. I greatly appreciate everybody coming and checking this out. One of the things that I appreciate about Terrence is he is not a techie, and he doesn't claim to be a techie, but he knows the right techies to talk to get the answers when I do have questions. So I do appreciate that. Do you know on the development side if the goal is to kind of make it drag and drop for doing firmware? And I don't necessarily want to call it hacks, but kind of like what the community has jumped behind the Retron 77 and the fact that that runs a firmware called Stella, or not a firmware, but an emulator called Stella. Is that kind of where you are working to get the Retron SQ2? Is kind of where the Retron 77 is at in the community?
To be honest, I'd honestly have to ask my dev team about that, but I personally would want it to, because the easier it is to patch and the easier it is to update the firmware and do custom builds, the more fun it's going to be trying to tinker with it. And I guess sometimes I'll go into Atari Age and look at all the Retron 77 stuff, and it is cool how many people are actively still working on it and trying to mess around with it. So that is something I would like for the Retron SQ to have. And personally, because I do make chip music, I would like to produce music directly on the SQ, and that is something that I hope will happen. And like as you've seen in some of the videos, their flashcards don't immediately work on there. And I do have a hunch that if you do want to use software like Nanoloop or LSDJ to produce music, it would probably have to be on a single ROM cartridge, not a multi-cart or flash cartridge. But when that, if those aren't necessarily super available, so, but yeah, my personal preference is for it to be able to support more flash carts or EverDrive, so that way you can produce music, and also homebrews and stuff like that.
Well, and that kind of brings up another interesting question, and I don't have any myself, but reproduction cartridges, like the folks at Limited Run Games have, why can I not think of the Genie? Crud. Yeah. Will those work on this? And I know the Star Wars games for the Game Boy have also been redone by Limited Run, and I just don't have any to test. Can you confirm one way or the other if those should be able to work?
There's no reason why they shouldn't work, but we've only tried a couple here, and there weren't any big games. I still have to bring in I have a Mother 3 Repro that I do need to try out, and that's something I can get back to you on. But I haven't tried anything big like a green Pokemon Repro or anything like that. So yeah, we do kind of have an overwhelming amount of like original like licensed and original titles here. I wish we could get more repo carts, but we haven't gone to a convention in so long, so we haven't been able to pick up anything.
I'm a little over a month for my next one, so I'm looking forward to that. And Martin here asks an interesting question. Is there a technical reason why flash carts are not supported? I would have to assume it's something pretty similar to why they generally don't work on the Retron 5, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so I mean, when the SQ tries to dump a ROM, I believe if you're using, and again, I'm not super techie on this, like if it's trying to dump a ROM and you have a flash cart, it won't immediately, pull the ROM that you want. So let's say you put in, I don't know, like a homebrew into the Game Boy or into your flash cart, it's not going to automatically pick that exact one. Even if you load it up with just the one ROM in there, the software is not telling, it's not telling the flash cart to only dump that one ROM. So, and that's why, hopefully the community will maybe try to figure that part out. Because, I mean, the thing is, again, it's not something we wanted to work on specifically, because we do support having original cartridges, original hardware. So, if you do want like better flash cart support, I'd leave it up to the community. But yeah, that's basically the reason. It's just not specifically telling that ROM to dump.
Well, and this is what I've told a lot of people. I'm sure that you've been kind of checking out the comments on the couple of uploads that I've done. If you're buying one of these and you're going to run a flash cart, and no offense to Hyperkin here, buy a Raspberry Pi. And simply because it's A, you're going to be cheaper, and B, you're not running physical hardware. The advantage of something like this is the fact that you are able to play a physical cartridge. And for me, I've got a thing about the piracy side of things of flash cards too, so that's why I'm not a huge fan. But honestly, if that's what you're looking to do, I don't think that this is necessarily the product for you. There are other solutions out there. If you're looking to play physical cartridges, this could eventually become one of those things that could be a useful asset towards you. And Star Blaster 69 asked a good question, one that I was going to get into, and this is a good time to jump into it. One of the differences, so we have the Retron SQ here, and then we all know Analog has got their $200+ Game Boy that will have a dock and this, that, and the other thing. Huge price differences between the two, but it's because the hardware is different. Analog, FPGA, whereas with most Hyperkin systems, it's either a system on a chip or it's software emulation, such as what the SQ has, what the Retron 5 has. Will Hyperkin, or has Hyperkin ever looked at going at the FPGA route? And if so, why or why not is that the right choice for Hyperkin in the future?
Well, first off, I want to say personally, I'm a huge fan of Analog. I mean, the stuff they're making is incredible. I personally want the Pocket. That thing looks so cool, and it does support, LSDJ. It supports Nano Loop. I believe Nano Loop is built in, so I can make beats without even having to buy a separate cartridge for it. But we do know that there is a vast difference between what they do and what we do. I think they do carry to more of a hardcore crowd, people that are really interested in a very accurate and very, I guess, I guess they just want something that's a little more catered towards the best possible experience. Whereas Hyperkin, we do make stuff for, people to pick up, and just kind of throw onto your TV and play, maybe forget about it for like a week and then be like, oh man, we could play Pokemon on the TV. Let's do that. And then it's kind of like, it's a casual experience, but we do try to cater to more of the hardcore crowd every now and then. The Analog, who knows? Maybe someday we'll want to do something that's super boutique-like, kind of like how Analog started, just very, very high-end and super niche. But as for right now, we try to make everyone happy, as much as we can. And
you're not tacos. You're not going to make everybody happy. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Well, and you touched on this a little bit here, and maybe it's something I didn't notice, and or it's something that's in a later version of firmware that I haven't tested yet. So did I hear you correct when you said the aspect ratios are now correct?
Yeah, we actually were able to fix that pretty quickly, and it's just not up anywhere hosted or anything. And I saw it myself. We were trying it out the other day, and I was like, okay, I get what everyone's saying. Because if you look at it compared to a 4:3 aspect ratio, and it definitely makes sense. And when it was pointed out in those reviews, I was like, wow. I mean, I think a lot of our other consoles, like the Super Retron, the Mega Retron, those are in 4:3, 16:9. And I was wondering, I wonder how many people actually care that much. And obviously I do know, because I'm on forums and Reddit and I'm in Facebook groups all day, but I just wondered what the general public would say. And, it's cool to know that there's actually people who care that much about the aspect ratio. Then, it's not just the hardcore retro guys. And, yeah, it's basically it's fixed, and I believe that'll show up in the day 1 or if not day 0 patch.
Very cool. Two other options that I've heard people ask about, one of which I know there's a solution for, and one I haven't heard addressed yet. Mm-hmm. So me, Game Boy, I'm playing by myself. I'm doing this, and if you want to see how to do this, check out the channel. I have a tutorial how to make your Game Boy Advance Spice Orange like this, which is super sexy. But I'm playing like this. I'm not using a link cable. I'm not playing with anyone else. I've never played, and someone made a comment, and I thought about it earlier today. I've never played multiplayer on a Game Boy. People clearly want it, because I get asked about it in the comment section all the time. Is that something that later on, either using a USB hub or some other solution, that could be added to the SQ down the road?
Honestly, I do not know, but I believe it was just difficult to actually add into the console itself. I mean, something like that. And I honestly don't know if the Pocket is going to do this, but I would think that it would require some sort of dual screen kind of access, or I don't even know how technically that would work. But that is something people have asked. It hasn't been something people have obsessively asked us, because honestly, I only used the link cable in the past to play, I think it was Tetris, and then, Pokemon related things. And that was the only time I ever used the link cable. So it is cool to hear that other people's experience was that they did use the link cable a lot, and so that's something to consider for the future. But as far as the SQ, yeah, if we do implement that, it might be very difficult, and it won't be for a long time, I would say.
Yeah, you'd almost have to have a split screen. I'm just thinking of the layout, because each person would have been looking at their own screen and whatnot with the Game Boy. So I guess that makes sense. And finally, before we leave the Retron SQ behind, I do want to ask about, I guess there's a one of my tests, I tried using the dongles for the wireless Scout and wireless Cadet on the Retron SQ using the USB cable. Didn't work. Either connecting to the dongles or directly to the controllers. But I guess there is a wireless dongle you guys are working on that will allow you to use either Bluetooth or other controllers. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually coming up pretty soon, and I think it might actually be up for pre-order on hyperkinlab.com. It's called the Alpha Star, and what it does is it basically allows you to play your, I believe it's PS4 and PS5, and also Xbox One controllers on your Switch. But it also lets you use your Scout, Cadet, or Admiral on the Retron SQ. So it's kind of a cool, all-in-one adapter, and it does work with via Bluetooth. So it does work specifically with the Retron SQ, and what we're hoping is that if we do release more consoles with a USB type controller port, then we want it to also work for that as well. But yeah, the Alpha Star, I believe it's on hyperkinlab.com currently.
Yeah, I thought I saw it earlier today when I was just making some notes for myself. If folks have other additional questions about the Retron SQ before we wrap it up, please leave it in the chat, and we will kind of do a final quick fire towards the end of the interview. But I do want to move on now to the Retron 5. And the Retron 5 has a special place in my collecting history because it's really what got me, back into retro. I mean, I always owned the current generation systems, but what I would do, because I didn't have the money to just buy is I would trade in the last generation to buy next generation. So when I bought my Super NES, I traded in my NES. Same thing with my Super NES, I got my N64, and so on and so on and so forth. The Retron 5 not only got me into the retro stuff all over again, but it also got me into importing, because I discovered through that, and thanks to great people in the community like John Riggs, the fact that you can play so many Super Famicom, Mega Drive games in the US, no need to worry about translations. And there is a new Retron 5 Beach Edition coming out. And what I want to know is, obviously we have an additional controller packed in, but above and beyond that, are there any significant hardware or software differences between the Retron Beach Edition, and then there's another color variant, I can't remember what it is, and the original one?
Yeah, I believe we have a black one, and as far as new versions of the Retron 5, like you'll see the packaging is a lot different than older iterations. But yeah, we have a black one and a Hyper Beach one. In terms of differences, there's a couple, and but they're not like vastly different than the original iterations. We do have what's it called? Pin perfect slots for so basically Pin perfect is sort of a technology that we that we coined these our cartridge slots in some of our consoles. So I believe Super Retron HD has it. I believe our current Superboy has it, but it's just very, very nice, strong cartridge slots. So I've demonstrated it before in some of our some of our conventions. It's basically if you insert a cartridge into a pin perfect slot, if you shake it, if you jiggle it, if you try to move the console, they will maintain connection as long as you're not rattling the heck out of it. But yeah, I believe we are using pin perfect technology in the Retron 5 now. So, and also I know people we're having problems with inserting and also removing the cartridges, and it comes out like butter now. It's really smooth. Another thing is they will ship with the most up-to-date firmware, and I believe, according to my colleague, I believe it's 0.3.4. But I will say that there isn't too much of a difference between that and the previous 0.3.0 iterations that have been hosted on our website. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exactly what the differences are in terms of what the older firmware is versus the current one, but it will ship with the most up-to-date one, so you don't have to patch it with the up-to-date firmware anymore. It already comes pre-patched with the firmware. But yeah, that's basically, those are the big differences. And I do personally really like the pin perfect technology, because there's been times when I'm playing any retro console and I accidentally kick it, because when I was a kid I'd put the console on the floor. And then like I remember being in the middle of area 88 for Super Famicom. I kicked the console and I was near the very last level, and my cousins were playing with me. It was one of those things where being in the game and we were sharing the controller, and basically, I ruined the whole game for everyone.
Oh.
I was not the hero that day. But yeah, the pin perfect is great, and I know people. The slots on the Retron 5 has been a point of discussion for a really long time, and so yeah, those slots are really nice. So I
gotta honestly say, I mean, I never had an issue with them, but I know I've talked to I can't forget if it was Joe or Dave at GameSack. They talked about it, and the guys over at My Life in Gaming kind of talked to about the pins on the Retron 5. They had ones where the pins would pull out and whatnot at times. I never had an issue with mine. The only issue I ever had with mine was when it fell off that shelf back behind me and I broke the power slot. So yay me. But I will say, having tested the Retron HD, the Retron 2 HD, the Retron 3 HD, the Mega Retron HD, the Superboy Black Gold. I mean, the pins in those are definitely superior to what was in the original Retron 5. So I'm glad to see from a hardware standpoint that you have gone ahead and made those improvements. It's good to see. The second controller included. I mean, being blunt, I don't know that many people would say that the stock Retron 5 controller is their favorite. So, I mean, is that basically just to get people something they can use right out of the gate and not have to rely on the stock wired controller? And why go wired with that versus perhaps including the wireless version?
Yeah, to be completely honest, there'll be times where in our older iterations, people were not able to pair their wireless either off the bat because maybe the controller just, I don't know, maybe it's just been in the box for like the past, how long has it been? 7 years since it's come out?
I got mine in 15.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it's just not charged and they're not able to pair it off the bat, or it just for some reason just doesn't pair. There's a number of reasons why it won't pair off the bat. It could be firmware related. So the cool thing is with the wired controller, you're allowed to go in and pair it to pair the controller using a wired controller, because it's the only way to get into the settings that way. Before, we'd get calls and people would be like, yeah, I can't pair the wired controller. And we tell them, oh, all you got to do is just use a wired controller, and then you can pair your controller that way through the settings. And then they'd be like, I don't have a wired controller. And like,
right.
We forget that, we have like infinite controllers around us we can just pull. But, people don't, you move into a new apartment, you're not living at your parents' house anymore. You don't have your old controller. It's just laying around. So, that controller is basically for the people that just don't have one laying around and they want to get in there. But honestly, the Scout is a great controller. So using it for playing your games on a Retron 5 is a pretty good option.
Yep, mine's over there.
Awesome.
Well, and there have been concerns, and honestly, for me, I'm one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of things. My Retron 5 has been working fine. So I haven't been really up to date on a lot of the firmware updates. I've seen some people mention like on certain 3D, either Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance games, that there may be issues with that. And there have been concerns that development has kind of come to a stop or just isn't moving like it had been in the past with the original Retron 5. Is the firmware from the Hyper Beach edition, will that be compatible with the originals? And are there more firmware updates coming?
I believe the one that's being packed in with the Hyper Beach and also the most up-to-date Black console, I think the goal would be to actually host it on our website, or I think actually what we're going to do is it's going to be on a per request basis. The reason being is because it is kind of a difficult process to actually update the firmware on there. So we do like, if people do need to actually update it, we want to walk them through step by step. But I believe with the Retron 5, to be honest, you're right. It has been kind of slowed down in terms of updates, and I'm not going to say we're never going to support it ever again, but it's a console that's been out for 7 years, and hopefully we want to make way for, who knows, maybe a Retron 6. I don't know, maybe a whole new Retron, a multi-cart Retron console, but that's what I'm hoping for. And but but there are people still buying the Retron 5, and I'm happy for that. So yeah, we're not just going to ignore you and say like yeah, we're not going to update it anymore. But I can say that it's not a priority in terms of like rolling out our new Retron consoles, because we have been, if you've noticed, like aside from the SQ and the 77, we have been trying to go for more I guess hardware solutions rather than software solutions. And who knows how difficult that'll be for multi-cart consoles, but the Retron 3 HD is out there, Retron 2 HD is out there, and hopefully we can start working on a whole new multi-cart console, and that's where I want to see the company moving forward from here. But I'm still glad that people still support the Retron 5 and are so interested in it, because it's still a beast. I still love mine. I have my own that I won in a company Christmas raffle that I beat up, and it's still working. Like, I don't know, when people say that they're ripping out the pins and stuff like that, I don't take care of mine. I beat it the heck up, and it still works fine. So I might just be lucky. Who knows?
Well, and I wonder that same thing, because until I literally dropped mine off the shelf behind me, it had worked like a champ from day one, and I never had any issues. I forget who it is. Someone at some point had started putting out, this was one of the really cool things about the Retron 5, was some of the language patches that you could run on there. So I actually have the Super Famicom version of The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Wonderful game. And I could now play it through the Retron 5. Sorry if you saw that rainbow coming out of my mouth there. But I could play it on the Retron 5 thanks to the language patches. There's some really cool things that system can still do, that unless you're going to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars, or I know Voltar has come and done language patches on some games, which you have to have soldering skills and everything like that. And I love Voltar to death. Hi, Daddy, if you're listening. But that's not something that the average consumer can do. The average consumer can go to a website, download a language patch, put in the SD card, and play import games that are, quite honestly, a heck of a lot less expensive than the U.S. counterparts.
Yeah, so the cool thing about the Retron 5 is that there's actually they're not huge, but there is a community on Reddit where they've actually listed ways that you can basically prolong the life of your Retron 5 so that way you can just use the very early models as you please without damaging it, without any hiccups. I believe it's probably just r/Retron 5. I'm not totally sure, but I went on there and I'm like, wow, there's things on here that I wouldn't have even thought of in terms of either modifying or getting the most out of the Retron 5. So definitely check on Reddit. There's really good examples on how to get the most out of it. And yeah, we've seen people modify and hack the Retron 5 to bits, and that's really cool, and go for it. Because if you get to play whatever you want on a console, then we support that. Because I have Chrono Trigger, the Japanese version, and I have Bahamut Lagoon. Both were super cheap when I bought them in Japan, but I can't play them honestly on original hardware because I can't read Japanese. So that IPS patcher for the Retron 5 is amazing. So
yeah, it's a neat addition. I want to get to some updates on a couple of other products in the Hyperkin library. I apologize if you guys hear my dogs barking in back. I think my wife and the baby just got home, and they're stupid and don't know how to not bark. Otherwise, there could just be a leaf blowing in front of the yard too. So who knows? We have had someone had asked about an X86, and I am not familiar with it. And they told me that it was something like almost like a PC, an early PC emulator. Can you tell me anything about this? Because it's honestly something I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. So when we initially announced that, I believe so, it was going to be a sort of like an all-in-one, all-encompassing computer that plays old school, I guess 80s, 90s PC games. And it's been so long. I can't remember the specifics, but I think we wanted it to be, sort of the form factor of computers like the Commodore 64, the VIC, or something along those lines. And I personally wanted mechanical keys on it because I'm a mechanical keyboard collector. But yeah, that is a project that we announced so long ago. I believe that was like 2014 when I first started. And to be honest, like it's something that we're still it's still been a long time since we've actually had an update on that project. But I mean, it's still on the list of projects we're still working on. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe next year we'll have some sort of update. But yeah, that was the all-in-one PC gaming, classic PC gaming machine we were planning.
Next up is something that I am pretty sure has shipped, but I still get questions about it. And the funny thing is, anytime it's like, hey guys, check out this video on Hyperkin I did, and I shared it to the Hyperkin Facebook page, and like in less than 3 comments, what about the X88? Can you share any updates on the X88?
So yeah, the X88 shipped last September, I believe, and it didn't have the best response, and I can understand. But the thing is, we did pretty much, we did pretty well selling it, but I can understand the critical response wasn't that great. And all I can say is, it's very difficult to make a wireless mic for the Xbox One, and we tried to be as true to the original Xbox 360 version. So, it just wasn't to a lot of people's tastes. And, if given the chance, I'd love for us to make like a better version, something that's, sounds like a modern Xbox like headset, which is what Xbox is making now. They are making a wireless Xbox headset for the Series X. So, but yeah, that one has shipped. That one's been out, and you can find it. I believe it's on Amazon and hyperkinlab.com.
One that I'm interested in, because quite frankly, and I've been fairly vocal about this, I don't like this controller. And it's one of the reasons why I have never been a huge fan of the Xbox platform is I've just never really cared for the Xbox controller. Now, the Series S and X controller like this one here, it's better. It still has issues that I am not thrilled about. And either at E3 2018 or 19, you guys teased a PlayStation 4 style controller, but designed for the Xbox. I want to say it was called the Contender. But since that show, I have not heard anything about it. And for some reason, you don't like to respond to my emails on that one. So is there any, and I kid about that, but is there any updates that you can provide on that?
Yeah, I think at the time I just didn't have any info, and I did get some info on it recently. Yeah, I think we're still working on it. It's called the Competitor. And the reason why it's called the Competitor, I guess the joke reason is basically it's a PS4 style controller for the Xbox, and technically the PS4 is the competitor of the Xbox, or sorry, the PS5 is the competitor of the Xbox. But competitor in a general sense, it's supposed to give you a competitive edge if you are used to a controller like the PlayStation controller. But we are hoping to release it this year. I can tell you that, but I don't have an exact date or anything else further than that. But yeah, I'll keep you up to date on that, and it's still coming. So.
Okay. And I'm assuming just because Microsoft has actually been very good at making controllers backwards and forwards compatible between the One Series and I guess you would call it the Series, as dumb as that sounds, but it would work back and forth between all, I guess, 6 different consoles if you consider all the different variants of the Xbox One.
Yeah, I believe we want it to work on Xbox One /Series as well, and I believe that's like I think our whole family of Xbox controllers should be able to go back and forth between the 2 generations. So
next up is someone kind of put a rumor out there about maybe a Ultra 64 N64 sort of clone console. I'm sure that's just, pie in the sky hopes, but can you provide us any updates on that system and where we might be at?
Yeah, so the Retron Ult, which we announced in, I believe, E3 2019, the last true in-person E3, That one, yeah. So at the time, I think we in our E3 booth, we just kind of had a little shell, basically, or a model. Wasn't playable at the time. Um, Actually, no, it had internals, but it just wasn't playable. We weren't allowing people to touch it or anything. Still,
Yeah, because I seem to remember like a sizzle video or something like that where you guys actually showed it off, but not on site.
yeah. And all I can say right now, it's still being developed, and the reason why it's taking so long is because it's such a hard project. There's nothing out on the market like it, and it's a really ambitious project. Um, but we hope to release it soon. That's all I can say. But yeah, it's just taking a really long time, and it's one of those things where we have to get it right. Like the N64 fandom and the community, they're so. I mean, there's nothing out there to satisfy really playing N64 games unless you're just playing on an N64. And we know that like CRT TVs are, they're deteriorating day by day. It's just harder.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there because Linda, aka the gamer girl, just came in here. Nobody wants CRTs. Nobody wants scan lines. Confirmed.
Well, I personally am a fan of CRT TVs.
No,
but because I work at Hyperkin, I see the merits of playing HD, and yeah, it's really good on my eyes. I've been nearsighted since I was 5, so yeah, playing on something that doesn't make my eyes hurt after like an hour is really nice. So I am looking forward to playing all these games on HD, and but yeah, also I play a lot of DDR, and a lot of the DDR machines still have CRT TVs. So it's kind of funny to me that like definitely.
All right. And at this point, we're going to go to some audience questions. If you guys and gals out there have not submitted, because we've only got a couple more minutes left, I'm just going to kind of buzz through these one by one as quickly as we can get through them. Let's see. Question here was, are you working on a system that will play Nintendo DS and 3DS games on the big screen?
Well, actually, my coworker just told me yesterday. He asked me, like, do you think people would want something like that? And I said, wow, like that's something I wanted with the Wii U, because the Wii U is perfect. It has the tablet, obviously, the gamepad, and then it allows you access to play a separate content on the actual TV screen. I'm thinking like we'd have to do something pretty similar. We would have to have some sort of touch controller, and would have to be able to display, in sync with the television, the top screen content. So that's something that's really hard. And I can say that, we're always working on like different solutions for different things. And the DS is something we haven't really talked about much, because that's a really ambitious project, but that would be really cool because I have so many DS games. I want to play the DS version of Chrono Trigger on an actual console. That would be really cool.
You RPG nerds. That's all I got to say about that. Let's see. Don't know if they'd answer, but would like to know if they view themselves as competitors like Analog or the Mr. Project. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, that respect for Analog, kind of different price point, different kind of focused audience.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we did talk about that earlier. I want to say like, these are the kinds of people who come to our booth, which I've observed. They're basically kids who've never played retro games before, and they're interested in it, and maybe their dad gave them like a Pokemon cartridge or something. There's also the cool dad, I like to call him cool dad, that comes to our booth, and they're probably pushing a stroller. They're probably in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're showing off to their kids like, oh, this is my generation of games. You guys don't know anything about this. This is what I'm all about. And that's our audience for the most part. And then, we do get the hardcore retro nerds who will come, and like we'll try to cater to them as well. But we want to satisfy that kind of, and I don't want to get like weird and high-minded here, but like that initial visceral feeling of just playing a nostalgic game. Kind of like when you're watching a Tarantino movie or something. There's like something that triggers something in your brain that's just like, wow, there's something I like about this because it's retro and it's cool. But I can't really pinpoint it. And that's kind of like when you're playing something, when you're playing one of our games or sorry, one of our consoles, that's the initial feeling I want to get. And it's like the same thing with when you're watching a Tarantino movie. You're not going out and trying to find some super obscure like grindhouse film. You just pop in Pulp Fiction, and then you get that feeling, and it's already there. So I kind of went off track there, but yeah, basically, yeah, we're Analog. We love what they do, and what they're doing is amazing. And I personally love their products as well. And I think we actually have an Analog in the Super Nintendo console. We have one in the office that we've thrown a couple games on, just to marvel at how beautiful it is. But yeah, it's a totally different demographic, totally different scene. And I know there's a lot of overlap, but yeah, we want to cater to the people too who just want to, let's say they're at they're at a gaming store and they see our console and, oh man, I really want to play that random Street Fighter game I have that my mom left in the box when I moved out. They just want to play that, and then yeah, basically that's what our consoles are for. They're just for you to get that nostalgic experience without having too many things to worry about, like what kind of cable should I use. Just want to throw it onto your TV and have an immediate visceral experience, basically.
One question that we had got coming up to this was if there's going to be any improvement in distribution in the EU. For example, we can order through Amazon US, but shipping and the time frame tends to be counterintuitive.
Yeah, that one I'll have to update our social media with once I get more details, because we do distribute to the UK and also different parts of Europe, and we go south of the border, like South America, Central America, some parts of Asia, and it's not always the same for every single product. We have some products we probably won't even distribute to certain areas, but once we get a better picture of the EU and even like our neighbors Canada, we tend to kind of post it as it comes. So yeah, we'll post more information on the UK distribution and European distribution, and other parts of Europe as well. I know like we have different distribution people we work with in different segmented parts of Europe. So it's not all like across the board.
Gotcha. Got 3 minutes left here, so we're going to try to power through a couple of these real quick here. From our co-host, Life with Matthew, make sure you check out his channel as well. Can the wireless receivers be purchased without buying a whole additional controller? And which do you think is the better choice for low latency, Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz? I'm assuming he's talking about on the Scout and the Cadet controllers.
So I believe for the Alpha Star, that is actually a separate dongle, but the Scout and Cadet controllers, those they just come with the they come with the dongle, and you can't buy the dongle separately, unfortunately. As far as the two different connection types, I personally just because I don't really play a lot of retro fighting games or anything that requires any frame heavy input. So I don't mind Bluetooth actually, but I do know that there's a lot of people that they prefer the other option, which is okay. But just because it's more convenient for me, I do kind of prefer the Bluetooth, because then I could with that controller I can just chuck it onto my PC, onto my phone. So I guess over time I've grown to like Bluetooth a little bit more. But I can understand not wanting to use Bluetooth if you're wanting to play like a Street Fighter or maybe even some bullet hells that require you to be a little bit more
like an Ikaruga.
Yeah, a little bit more conscious of the frames. Then yeah, maybe Bluetooth won't be for you. But yeah, I see merits in both.
Okay. Did I have questions where people asking about whether or not they would be able to get the USB Scout controllers from the Retron SQ, just the controllers themselves in either the black gold or the Hyper Beach colors? Had a number of people looking for that.
Oh, wow. We do produce a version of the Scout that is compatible with USB, but that does not come in those colors. But
yeah, they're specifically looking for that color combination.
Yeah, I mean, if people want it, we can look into producing something like that. We just didn't know how many people were actually looking for anything that specific, but it's good to know. And yeah, we'd be happy to make something like that if more people were interested.
And we're going to finish off with this one here from our good friend Eugene Myers, who wants to know, do you have focus groups or external testers who you get feedback from before sending beta units to YouTubers who are going to post reviews that may turn off customers? If not, he would like to go ahead and volunteer to go ahead and be one of those focus groups or external beta testers.
To be honest, yeah, we haven't necessarily gone through focus groups. I think it's because at the time when our company had quite a lot more people in our marketing team. It's actually just me right now, plus a couple of people that help every now and then in our department. Yeah, before we had maybe 3 or 4 dudes in our team, and we would do a bulk of the testing. We would just chuck a bunch of cartridges at the console until we would, until we break it basically, and just to see how far we could push these things. But yeah, we don't necessarily work with focus groups, and who knows, maybe we will in the future. You can try to message us directly on our Twitter account, and give us your contact info, and I can send. You can shoot me an email as well, or I'll be happy to share my email address in the DM if you'd like. Yeah, we could talk about it. Maybe if you have any good ideas, I'm happy to listen. And we always want people from the community to, it helps us improve, it helps us grow. So anyone that has a different experience or maybe narrative of growing up playing retro games, that helps us make our products better, and they make it more enjoyable for the whole community.
Well, Terrence, I want to thank you so very much for your time, for answering all these questions, and for basically just being open and honest with everything that's going on. I think the one thing that has frustrated me, there have been a number of comments, Hyperkin is trying to scam people. No, there are a bunch of people that are working really hard. It's a pretty small team, and you know what? Sometimes they don't get things right out of the box. But the good news that I've said to many people to keep in mind right now, as of right now, there's 5 or 6 people who actually have these that are affected by any issues. These haven't shipped yet. They're not going to ship for another couple of weeks. They are working very hard behind the scenes to go ahead and get things right. I do, again, just want to thank you for your time, for spending it with us here tonight with the channel, and any closing words, or where can people follow Hyperkin to learn more? That's a big thing, where people have questions, if they have concerns, where can they go, and where can they be a part of the Hyperkin community as well?
Yeah, I believe you can find us on Twitter. It's at Hyperkin, Instagram at Hyperkin, and Facebook. I believe that's actually at Hyperkin Games. So, sorry, not at, but it's Hyperkin, Facebook.com/Hyperkin Games. So, yeah, send us an email or send us a message on there if you have any questions. I want to thank Gary for having me on the show, and it's people like Gary and like Metal Jesus and John Hancock. They're doing a great job. They're taking their expertise and applying it to something that we love, which is retro gaming and gaming in general. And they're doing it with an honest, and very honest perspective. And Gary, I love because he's really thorough. Like, his videos are so long. And the thing is, when I get ready for work in the morning or even at night, I don't like watching short videos. I have to eat breakfast in front of a YouTube video. So Gary's are perfect because I'll take my time eating or something. So yeah, definitely. We love Gary's content, and it's always honest, and it's what we expect most people with any journalistic integrity to have. So thank you so much for having us, Gary.
Well, again, I thank you very much. Everybody, I just put a link in the chat. Our good friend Russ Lyman is streaming. He is doing Mario Day sort of content. I think he is up next with Mario Maker. He'll be starting soon. Go ahead, head to that link and use hashtag RockSolidRaid to let them know that we sent you. Again, Terrence, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And until our next stream, until our next interview, let me know if you're watching this during or after. Do you like this sort of thing? Do you want to see us do more? Let me know. And until our next stream, we are checked out, gone.